afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? And hello, everyone online. My name is Asma Lateef, and I'm here with Mwandwe.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mwandwe Chileshe.
Mwandwe and I were asked to facilitate a process of discussion and around a declaration that had been drafted in advance of this summit. And over the last 2 days, we've had really rich discussions around the draft. This period of time was meant to be a period where we would read out the final declaration. But in the course of the conversations that we've had over the last 2 days, there was a decision to slow down the process and to really think through what the declaration is for, why we need it as a collective that wants to end hunger. And so during this session, Mwandwe and I will really reflect on the conversations we've had, as well as a conversation around the way forward. Even that is still to be further discussed, but I think there are some really good concrete ideas on the table. So Mwandwe, what were some of the things that came up?
Absolutely. I think what the last 2 days have been, it's been a listening process, a digesting process. What I want to do is, first of all, say about 5 words that came up in the meetings that we've had, in the sessions that we've had. And most of you will recognize these words because you would have participated. And for the folks online, I think this will also then help you sort of reflect on sort of these big ideas that came up. So we heard we hadn't talked enough about inequality. We hadn't talked enough about injustices that exist. We hadn't talked enough about the larger systems. And this also encompassed things like governance. But it also, we hadn't talked about one that was a very recurring theme, money. How do we get this done without the financing behind it? I think that while these words are sort of a summation of these rich discussions, it really points to some of the things that really came up. And then an overarching one was the sense of hope and inspiration, that while we took the time to highlight all the things that we could do better, that we hadn't done enough to talk about the points of what has worked and how do we do that to scale. While we had talked about all of the things that we could do better, we hadn't sort of framed this picture enough about what does the utopia look like, that we'd focused maybe a little bit too much on the negative. So I think the sessions sort of went from one point to the next, but what really came down to it is that while folks didn't disagree that we needed to make sure that we were creating change and moving towards ending hunger, there was an idea and an undertone that we needed greater ambition, that we needed more systems thinking, that we needed to be thinking about what is the definition of the we. This was a very common thing. How do we define we? How do we define how I am going to create change? How do we define how we are going to create change? Who is in the room? Who is not in the room? Asma? So
we've also discussed a lot the process, and I think the last session that we had focused very much on the process. How do we, as a collective, get to a point where we agree on what is the problem that we're trying to solve? What are the solutions that are out there? What does it mean for the way we work? And how do we acknowledge that every organization is different, every individual is different, that's okay, but can we come around a set of values as well as a common roadmap? And so as we leave here today, there is, I think, a few steps that will need to be taken, a few conversations that need to be convened in order to get to a point where we're ready to draft and craft, co-create a declaration. Part of it is also a listening process. All of us work in communities? Are we listening? Have their voices been part of this conversation? And so there's a sense that we need to slow down, have some very concrete, discrete conversations across the organizations that have partnered for this summit on these key questions. What can we agree on the problem that we're trying to solve? Do we have a shared vision of what it'll take to end hunger? What are the solutions that work, that can go to scale, where we can work together? What can we do together? There are lots of things. Every organization here is doing really important work. But as the previous session, the Mentimeter exercise showed us that individually, all of us in this room pretty much believe that we need a massive or a high level of disruption in order to get to ending hunger by 2030, that our community needs to be disrupted. So what does that mean? And then acknowledging what our differences and also understanding what that means for the way forward. So it feels to me, as we come to a close of this summit, that if we can craft a process that allows us to listen to the communities that we're all in, that allows us to address some of these issues, we will be in a position collectively to co-create and draft the declaration that was envisioned, whether we call it a declaration or even that was something that came up in the discussion. Is it really a declaration? Is it a statement? Is it a call to action? Do we need a roadmap instead of a declaration? So these are some of, I think, the big questions that still need to be tackled.
I think a theme that has then come up is, at the end of today, it's what is the action that we take forward? That's the big thing. I also want to sort of play this role. I know we asked a lot of people in our sessions to join what me and Asma called the trust circle, and a lot of conversations came up. What we had in those sessions is that every single person at least had something to say about it, which shows the passion that existed. And so I think we also just want to thank you for this process that brought us to this point. But also it was a very intimidating process to be able to sum this conversation into me and Asma thinking about how do we put this into 10 minutes. Up to 2 seconds before we got on this stage, we were still debating what we were going to say. So once again, thank you very much for engaging in the process and for being here in the last 2 days and allowing to ask the questions that we've taken for granted, questions that we think have been simple, but we actually haven't taken the time to reflect on, allowing yourselves to be challenged and allowing yourselves to voice up what you thought needed to be the input and asking ourselves what happens beyond today. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you don't know who I am by now, I don't know what to tell you. So, you know why I'm here. Last question of the day. But before we pull that question up, you guys should know this, I wanted to give you some new data. Over the last 2 days, we've had 652 unique views from our virtual program from 33 countries. Our social media posts about Together Against Hunger have reached over, Lawrence? 600,000 people. Over 600,000 tweets, right? Pretty remarkable. We've had over 1,200 unique interactions on that same platform. So we thank our online teams. What has been a personal kind of moment is from a colleague, from a community participant in Uganda, She chatted on tweet and she said, I want to be involved. I want to be a part of Together Against Hunger. And we will be following up with that volunteer. She had never heard of us, and she wants to be a part of this journey. 96% of us said we need to find a better way to communicate about hunger. We have said that partnerships are the most important thing to reach our SDG 2, and I hope today, over the last 2 days, you have found some new partners, new kindred spirits, renewed energy, met people that you never thought you would actually meet. We also said, as Asma and Mwandwe pointed out, that 88% said massive or high disruption is needed. So that's our challenge going forward. Can SDG 2, zero hunger, actually be achieved? There's 8% of us who say yes, and we need that positive energy. We thank them for that contribution. 40% of us said yes, but we need to have some more work. And those of you that say no, we invite you to help us see what it will take for you to change your response. So our last question, are you ready, willing, and able to join a movement to rethink the fight to end hunger? So with that, we want to say yes. We're hopefully getting that courage. Use this little bar carpet. We definitely have the willingness. We're kind of ready. We're kind of able. But where we go forward from now depends on each of us. What you do differently tomorrow, whether you're going to a virtual office, taking a break, which is what I'm going to do. If we're authentic about envisioning a world without hunger, it falls on each of our shoulders. Thank you very much. I'd like to take a moment now and close the formal part of this session. We are very gifted and honored and humbled to have a young poet with us tonight who will be performing for us, and then Charles will wrap us up this afternoon.
It is with great pleasure we welcome DC Youth Poet Laureate Marjan Naderi to the Together Against Hunger stage.
I need everyone in this room to repeat after me. Peace. Peace. Love. Family. Peace. Love. Family. Peace. Love. Family. And now we're all here in peace, love, and as a family. Kennedy Center, Washington, D.C. How are we doing this evening? Okay, I see potential. It seems like some of us are tired. Some of us are just jet-lagged. Some of us are hungry. I get it. It's been a long time. But I'm here to share some poems with you all. When I was reached out to come to this event and speak with you all, it was an interesting moment because a week prior to that, a few of my family members in Afghanistan had passed away from malnourishment. They didn't have enough to purchase their own meals, and unfortunately passed away. And I was wondering, how do I bring the most intimate part of myself, my home, to this stage and offer it as part of this conversation? And so I'd like to open up this evening with a poem, an ode to my favorite dish, also an ode to my mother's hands, qabuli palau. And for those of you who do not know, qabuli comes from Kabuli, which is where my father is from, and we say we're Kabuli, and palau is the name of the food. So this poem is an offering for you all. With salt and pepper hair, my mother teaches me to taste my words before I spit them out. Her tongue is seasoned spicier than her kebabs. Her hands only know the language of making mantu off her mother's menu. So heritage runs down the throat and into the bloodline. Her favorite home is the kitchen, where the sun melts good morning through blindfolds and hands are already at work. She taught me lessons while cooking qabuli palau, gave me the recipe as she said, before you wash your hands, make wudu. Watch sins run down the drain so they don't end up in our family's food. And only make wudu with river water. Only then Zamzam will drip down the elbows for 10 cups of holy water. The ocean on your tongue is a language. You break the rocks in its path for 2 tablespoons of sea salt. Straighten your spine when you stand in the name of your Lord. If they tug, you pull on the roots of Marjan's strength for 4 carats. Bent elbows and bent knees with nothing but a prayer in pocket. Push picked and plucked grapes of survival from vines, strangling a future worth striving for. Dry up the bittersweet taste of toil for a cup of raisins. When you carry the weight of a crumbling country on your shoulders, you do not dust off her foundation, rather surrender to her sweetness for a kilogram of rice. Join all ingredients together for 2 hours. With the stories of my ancestors folded in the creases of my mother's palms, she holds a plate of qabuli palau, fresh off the stove. This mountain of brown rice with glistening carrots and raisins at its peak echoes my fingerprints into the soil of Afghanistan. And there is something so emulsifying about a table of food making history seem so easy to touch, to taste. Bismillah. When speaking about food, I often think about how food is ceremony. Food is ritual. It is symbolic of our belongings, of the crops grown in our area, of the dynasties that have clashed in our homelands. And with the current efforts of erasing my people, with the current erasure of Afghan women from the streets and from the rest of the world, I also remember that war and malnourishment are so closely intertwined and often come from economic and political instability. And so this next poem is entitled An Alternate Heaven for Refugees. In an alternate heaven for refugees, my people no longer kiss their ears to soil, hoping to hear the hums of an ancestry that lived. Here, power cannot twist our tongues and tie them around our throats. But I can't rewrite history the way they did. The world knows what they did, how they stole stories of our freedom and our bravery and claimed it as their own. But here, the world cannot stain our thobes ruby red, because here there are no borders. Do not call us dead, call us alive, because now we have the right to exist anywhere, whether we call it home or mosque or church or synagogue or human love. If it grows here, it knows its place in history. If you're born here, the land will love you back. In this heaven, we whisper our own names in prayer. A law rewinds every bullet. All the boys win the soccer match, and trophies get washed up on seashores instead of the bodies of children who knew how to swim but couldn't. But there, missiles banged like an orchestra singing forgotten names. There, oppression became muscle memory. There, I learned to count the dead and multiply body counts by the hour. There, my younger brother cried a prayer when he thought I would disintegrate a powdered skull. But brother, I wasn't there. I was here. Here, rather than throwing rocks at soldiers, we toss rocks into rivers to watch the ripplings of recovery nourish every thirsty body here. My mother's Yemeni grace pours upon me. My father's laugh, it lives in the olive trees of Palestine. And sockets of hope, they grow from Syrian soil here. I chant the Somali anthem, and I hear the wind sing it back. Lullabies that were once missiles are now my sister's voice, echoing in the mountains of Afghanistan. And there we rest. I earned this paradise by a death I did not deserve, because someone, somewhere, prayed the pieces of our ancestry would rest in peace. As refugees from Afghanistan and refugees from Ukraine now make massive waves across the world, they come into contact with new food, no? And when my family and I settled in, my mother would make dishes for gatherings and always leave a plate for our neighbors. And eventually the neighbors would get so hooked and be like, man, Kutsia, I love your qabali pilau. And she would make oshak. And some days she'd wake up and just make food for the neighbors and the neighbors alone. And I was asked to write a poem about newcomers. And this poem is for the newcomers. Home is the base where blessings bloom. Mainspring place for memories, melodies of curiosity. They whistle in the wind, blowing doors open. With keys as teeth, our mouths shape into welcoming. Khush amadi, lascavo próximo. We, the newcomers, come with stories in the creases of our smiles. Come with recipes for rhythm and prayer. And when our bellies rumbled in war, we learned to feed our neighbors with love. Let us feast, this a ceremony, joining foreign soil and America. Let us share of bravery, how it unravels on our tongues like a flag, unafraid to wave. Let us feast in the joyous beams of welcoming, until our bones speak the language of home. Thank you. Thank you all so much for being here tonight, and thank you so much for your work. Have a good night, everyone.
Would you please join me in thanking Marjan? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I also would like to thank Asma and Mwandwe for spending the time capturing everything, debating, challenging, to bring us here. I just want to thank you for what you've done and for helping us to be able to move forward, even with this new thinking. We want to thank you. We knew it was going to be messy. Of course it has to be messy. If it wasn't messy enough, we would not be here today talking about global hunger. It would have been resolved many, many years ago. And so the fact that we've come together the last 2 days to think through this and be where we are with it, forget about the adjectives that we use to describe these things, whether it's a declaration or whether it's a call to action. It doesn't really matter. What matters the most is what sits in our hearts. And that's what we are going to do from today onwards. And so let me share with you the actual intent, right, that we are going to be able to go in with. First of all, it's about, we came together, we wanted to challenge ourselves. Challenge ourselves. Let it come from the heart. Let it come from the soul. The discussions the last 2 days, I was so surprised the word love was being used. And we heard it throughout. Love, I didn't know this about love. Coming out of our hearts, challenging ourselves. And one of the things that I was struck by was when the Reverend Brown was talking, and he said, I mean, he's a Baptist preacher, right? Quoting the Quran. And he says, Allah will not change any person unless and until that person changes himself or herself. That's what we're talking about. And that is challenging ourselves in this sector. So it's us, everybody working together to be able to challenge ourselves. And with that, we know that our organizations are going to change. And that's where we're going to see energy. That's where we're going to see excitement. And then the final intent, Mwandwe and Asma, we heard you. Money. At the end of the day, a lot of these things will not get done without money. And so guess what we are going to do going forward? It's about us working together to make sure that hunger gets the right political priority that it deserves. Today it's been talked about here and it's there with the SDG 2 and others. When you have only seven years to go, it has to be a different discussion. And so what we are going to do together is be able to come, think through this, and engage and make sure there's that reprioritization to make sure if it's not the number one, if it's not the highest priority, hunger should be given that political priority that it deserves. And that's the intent, and that's what we're going to do. Now, going forward, we've heard from all of you that it is time for us to come together to be able to rethink this. And so October 14 is a very important day for us. That's when the hard work actually starts. This was just, call it a prelude, if you may. This is a prelude. The hard work is beginning on October 14. And that's where everybody here, those of you online, and everybody working together to make sure that even if we're not going to see zero hunger in 2030, it shouldn't be the projections of 160 million people in 2030. It is possible, and we will do it. And so in terms of next steps, the founding partners are certainly going to work together, and just a small number. That number is going to grow because we've already heard others are going to join. So we're going to join with the founding partners to be able to then sit down and then clarify a few things that we need to be able to do together and be able to move forward. And that's what we are going to do. At this stage, I'd like to invite the founding partners because without them, we would not be here today. And I'm going to mention one name from Salesforce, Amy Guterman. Would you please come over? Okay. Amy. Please, darling.
It's such a pleasure. Thank you for inviting us and bringing us to be part of this journey with all of you. My name is Amy Guterman. For those of you I haven't met yet, I lead our community innovation team at Salesforce, specifically looking at ways that we can use tech for social impact. And I was really intrigued earlier today, hearing from Jerry from Ben & Jerry's about the role of corporates in social impact. And I believe that we're a values-driven company, and we have, from the beginning of our work, put our time, our technology, our talent, and resources towards issues that are important in our world. And I'm personally leaving very inspired, having learned a lot about ways that we can elevate this conversation to our organization of 80,000 employees across the world, and understand the role that technology can play in the fight against hunger. So I bring back a commitment to helping to share everything that we learned here today, the conversations that came up about the importance of collaboration and local community voice in any solutions that are driven back to our organization, as well as we have been running a series of cohorts, working with community, doing activities much like we were doing earlier today around scalable solutions to understand the role that technology can play in the fight against hunger. And so I'm eager to work with the Declaration team and continuing to learn what that role is and how we can support that with our work back in our expertise area. So thank you so much for inviting us in and being so welcoming, and thank you to the Action Against Hunger team for putting this together.
Thank you. And please don't leave, you stay here. I'm not going to let her leave now, please. Stay right here, on my right, okay? Now, okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to invite all the founding partners that are here to walk to the stage. And so here we have what? Ciara's is Father Yilma here. Would you please join us? And as Father Yilma is joining us, and World Vision is here. Margaret, are you here? Would you please join us? And Care, where is Juan? Juan, please, come over. And Global Citizen, Mwandwe, please, join us. And Devex, where is Kate Warren and Walsh and others? Devex, are you here? Well, they wonderful. I'm also going to ask that we have our IEC members. Would you please join me on stage? IEC members. Where is Olivier? Where is Jean-Michel? Jean-Francois? Onomi, where are you, please? And our board chair, Mr. Ashwini, would you please join us? Mr. Ashwini. Please join. Yes. Okay. Thank you. But there's one person here. There's one person that I want all of us to be able to put our hands together and say a big thank you. Suzanne, where are you? Would you please join us? Suzanne, please. Susan, please. Please join us. Please. Please join us. Come over. Come over. Come over. Come over. Come over. Thank you. This is a small group. The next time we meet, probably in the year 2024, is going to be bigger because we know many, many, many partners are going to join us. That's how we're going to see great results. At this juncture, I think what I'm going to do is to ask all of us here to be able to move to the stage. We're going to take a picture together. We're going to hold hands, and we take picture together. So the production team, I think you're ready. Would you please do that? So all of us, can we please get up? Would it fit? We stay right here. Yes. We stay right here. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. We will be here. Yes. Don't push Charles. Please. Yes. Wonderful. Wonderful. Yes. Everybody. No, so we're...
Get tight. Come in the front. Go in the front.
I just want to make sure the production team that you have everybody. You have everybody right now. So there are a number of things we're going to do. We're going to, first of all, we're going to smile. And then two, we're going to be holding hands. Because this is what? Together Against Hunger. Now, I know it's COVID. Don't worry, we have a lot of... Okay. Online. Oh, those of you online. Now, if you can just stretch your hand towards your computer, that should be enough, okay? Because you've been with us throughout. So we're going to smile, take the picture, and then we're going to hold hands because it's all about us working together.
We're way up here, guys. You cannot wave and hold hands.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now, production, I just want to find out, do you have any song that we can do some dance here? Thank you. Thank you very much.